Good morning. Welcome. I'm Don Ardell. Thanks for tuning in to this webinar on worksite wellness. This Lunch and Learn will deal with a special kind of worksite wellness, what I call real wellness, which basically is the kind of wellness that I wrote about 30-some years ago in the book High Level Wellness: An Alternative to Doctors, Drugs, and Disease. REAL is an acronym, basically. It's a modifier that represents reason, that's the R part. The E is exuberance, and liberty, R-E-A-L. And real wellness is designed primarily to excite people about issues that affect quality of life. And I believe the time has come, because of the successes of existing worksite wellness, to transition from programs that are essentially about risk reduction, disease avoidance, basic health education information, all good stuff that has provided a good return on investment, towards issues that involve happiness, applied ethics, meaning and purpose, critical thinking, and other issues that I think everyone cares about. Not everyone really is all that much interested in health issues as such. They ought to be, but people are not. Some people are not. So in the next half hour, sit back and I'll give you an overview of what the nature of real wellness is as I see it. And we can explore this at greater length in other forums, such as at the coming National Wellness Conference in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So thanks again for joining, and let's get started.
I hope you're all well and cheerful today. I'm looking forward to an epic and triumphant weekend and another National Wellness Conference in just another week. I want to thank Michaela Conley at Health Promotion Career Net for hosting this Lunch and Learn live event. Brandon Du Chateau and the National Wellness Institute for promotional assistance, and Dr. Dave Randall of the Wales Center Global Healing for technical assistance. If anything goes wrong, blame them. I'm a victim. I should be compensated. Today we are gathered to discuss the agenda for worksite wellness. I've noticed a huge amount of information available on administrative matters, on recruiting employees, motivating them, coaching them, certifying the staff, measuring return on investment, assessing risk, reforming bad habits, coordinating this and getting support for that, and even connecting the mind with the body. Well, what will they think of next? All of this is, of course, well and good and quite appropriate, especially that last part about uniting the body with the brain. But something's missing. Whatever might that be? I think it's foundation issues of a good life. We might begin addressing that by clarifying what we want to mean by the term wellness. This will lead to conversations about what topics to address in wellness education. Have you had occasion to assess, to brainstorm, or otherwise ponder the most consequential agenda for wellness at the workplace? Ever? Can we entertain topics beyond lowering health risk, managing problems, and saving money? Consider the kind of worksite wellness programs we have now and ask yourself, is that all there is? Can we do better? Can we seek more? Or could we offer a richer agenda? Topics that go to the core of quality of life, matters that relate to living exuberantly rather than surviving and coping. For instance, can we, employees in this case, be guided to understand the science of happiness in order to make better choices that lead to greater joy in life? Can work and life itself be more meaningful? Can we talk about and get some help pondering our purposes, our connections with ourselves, each other, and the larger world? Can we be helped to think straight, to act with reason, and to make the most of our liberties and freedoms? Also, what does it mean to be an ethical person? And what values of a secular nature inform our loyalties and commitments? If these matters have appeal, you'll probably enjoy exploring and helping develop a real wellness agenda. A word or two on today's format. When I attend talks, I prefer images over words on slides. I like pretty pictures. Since we can't see each other in this webinar, I thought I'd offer a few pictures. Some might seem a bit bizarre. Please recognize one thing about the slides. Except for a few images of people, such as you're seeing now, the slides don't mean anything, or the pictures don't represent anything. They're just random pictures, so enjoy. To keep things interesting, I'll ask you a few questions as I go along. I know you can't answer, but the questions might help you put the ideas offered in a useful context. Now, despite what I just said about pictures, here are a few words. Keep in mind there will be follow-up opportunities. I've also posted many essays about real wellness at my website, seekwellness.com. Seekwellness.com. And this entire talk will be available at the website on Monday. Of course, I'll be at the Wellness Conference a week from now. Once more, go back. The real wellness presentation is set for Monday afternoon. Oh well, let's go back the other way. A little technical issue here. So anyway, what are your objectives for today's webinar? Let me tell you what mine are. I have 5, and these are the 5. To explain wellness, what it was always intended to entail, starting in the 70s, when those 4 characters you just saw a moment ago, Jack Travis, Bob Allen, Bill Hetler, and I, gained a bit of traction for the concept, introduced decades earlier by Ardell. To provide you with enough of the basics about the nature of what I now call real wellness, for you to decide if this approach deserves a closer look. Is it the direction or the kind of evolution you want to see for worksite wellness? My objective is to persuade you that it is. My third objective is to inspire you to become a real wellness enthusiast, personally and as a worksite agent. A co-conspirator perhaps, but not a mole. Let's come out of the closet and boast of our interest in real wellness. Fourth, to convey enough about real wellness that you can attempt it at your own worksite. And fifth, to prompt a transformed worksite agenda that's rich with positive educational elements that could lead many employees to quality of life advances. Now, am I getting carried away already? Stop me before I go too far. I know I only have a half hour, less than that now. Normally I need a week for each of these objectives. But time is a luxury we can't afford. Things are in a dreadful state. I'll start with a review of wellness, which is objective number 1, you might recall. The term has been around for more than half a century. It was intended to convey well-being toward a fulfilling life of consequence to self and others, positive ideas, healthy lifestyles, and the embrace of personal responsibility. Also, it's been used to promote, alas, I should say, it's been used to promote all manner of medical programs, holistic remedies, professional services, and a wide range of products. Since there is no Wellness Supreme Court or Wellness Vatican, or any other official sanctioning body, there's no consensus about what is proper, sensible, sanctified, or otherwise legitimate and appropriate about the use of the term. Not surprisingly, after so many years of a laissez-faire, no-holds-barred usage, wellness has come to mean whatever anyone wants it to mean. Therefore, let's think of wellness as a philosophy or mindset like our own species is evolving. So far, the term has not always evolved in ways that I find very enthusiastic. It has not fared well, in my view, at the workplace. The word's popular, but what is offered at most work sites is not even close to being wellness. I'm referring to the basic form of wellness, such as I described in my 76 book, High-Level Wellness Alternative to Doctors, Drugs, and Disease. By the way, my real wellness motto is not Ardell, although he did coin the phrase and got us all off to a great start, but rather the gentleman you're viewing just now, Robert Green Ingersoll, shown here, and here with his 2 daughters to whom his life was enriched in so many ways. But that's a topic for another webinar, so let me move along. Wellness should not be confused with risk reduction, medical testing, or miscellaneous health education. It's been happening for 30 years, but never forget the future lies ahead. A little note here, remember, don't try to find meaning in these images. It's just eye candy, though this one could pass for some kind of time machine, I suppose. Let's stop this limiting trend and move on towards genuine wellness programming. It can't happen unless you and others currently working with companies choose to embrace a more ambitious agenda for worksite education. If risk reduction, medical testing, and similar disease detection illness prevention efforts represent what I consider a middle school educational level, and I'm being generous here, real wellness would represent a university postgraduate level of continuous study. The current medically focused programs are useful and good, essential for the physical health of employees, especially those who have not looked after themselves very well. Such health education-based preventive efforts have provided a fair return on investment for most companies and organizations. However, it ain't wellness. It's not even close. And without genuine wellness elements, worksite efforts in the context of current problems represent a modern-day form of fiddling while Rome burns or the Titanic sinks, or pick your own imagery. Do you agree? Before deciding if you agree or not, consider what wellness programming might be like if the agenda featured real wellness elements. Here are half a dozen or so expectations that I have for real wellness if companies and other organizations were to evolve their programming to take on to introduce and to guide learning in real wellness skill areas. These projected outcomes contain the specifics about the nature of real wellness. Here we go. If work sites offered real wellness, you could expect the following. 1, employees would in time learn to derive more satisfaction from both their work and their lives. 2, employees would be supported and guided into an embrace of a much higher standard of personal responsibility, not just for their health, but for the overall quality of their lives. 3, employees would develop a solid understanding of the nature of happiness based upon research in recent years from the field of positive psychology, and they would gain insights on ways to experience more of it more often. 4, employees would accept the idea that life can, on occasions, be positively exuberant, even without alcohol and drugs. 5, employees would explore life's eternal questions that affect ideas about meaning and purpose. Try not to assume that workers are too dumb, undereducated, closed-minded, or intimidated to express or to want to learn about existential matters, cosmic wonders, and a rich library of varied wisdom available to 21st century humans that were out of bounds, unknowable to our ancestors. 6, employees would learn proven principles of critical thinking in everyday life situations and practical ways to apply these principles. Examples might include simple but highly effective concepts such as Carl Sagan's famous 10-point system for BS detection. A real wellness education might even lead to a better class of elected officials, as employees would be less likely to embrace or to vote for charlatans, mountebanks, world-class flakes, and total bloviators to high office. I hope you'll give me a little extra credit here for not identifying certain politicians who embody, in my view, all or most of these just noted qualities. It wasn't easy, but this is, after all, a nonpartisan webinar. 7, with real wellness offerings, employees would gain new respect for the nature of science. The objective here is to promote both a better understanding and a higher appreciation for reason and evidence-based decision-making. Parenthetically, I should mention that this wellness skill area has profound implications for reshaping employee beliefs about everyday choices to be made, such as whether to spend money on lottery tickets, on unproven medical products, or on alternative medical treatments, food supplements, and the like. It also has consequences for how susceptible employees might be to claims from astrologers, Bigfoot investigators, clairvoyants, televangelists, and other advocates for magical thinking. 2 more examples of expected benefits from a real wellness worksite program that promotes scientific literacy would be an appreciation of the randomness of events and circumstances versus holding on to such Stone Age perspectives as the idea that there's a reason for everything. No, there isn't. And of course, employees would be much less likely to cling to hopes for preposterously unlikely outcomes, like the Cubs ever playing in a World Series. Are you still with me? I'm just getting started with this listing of changes you could expect from real wellness programming as the thrust of worksite wellness. Let me mention a couple more that will help you appreciate how profoundly different real, that's reason, exuberance, and liberty, real wellness is from today's so-called wellness at the worksite. This would entail an 8th area. Employees would develop greater comfort levels in thinking about values. Gee, we hear a lot about values these days, don't we? They would be capable of talking about their ideas as well as listening respectfully to what others have to say about common decencies and ethical standards that should apply to work and other situations. This skill is an emotional discipline that promotes reflections about human values instrumental for democratic societies. The payoff of including such a skill area in worksite programming would be an increase in tolerance for differences, mutual understanding, and advances in family, corporate, and community harmony. Examples of common decencies promoted by all religions, but exclusive to none of them, are integrity, trustworthiness, benevolence, and fairness. Again, quick reminder here, don't read anything into these images. We all toss off these words, integrity, trustworthiness, benevolence, and fairness, but how many of us think about what they entail, what they really mean? And the question that comes up a lot in our society is, do we need religion to embrace and honor such values? Or is it in our interest to live in a decent community of human beings to embrace such qualities? Let's go over each one, as I think we should in worksite settings. Integrity includes truthfulness, promise-keeping, sincerity, and honesty. Trustworthiness includes fidelity, loyalty, and dependability. Benevolence involves goodwill, refraining from harming others personally or their property. And fairness encompasses gratitude, accountability, justice, tolerance, and cooperation. These are things decent people everywhere would want to embrace if there were no religions. And they go well, of course, if you do embrace religion. So it's independent of whatever it is you believe about the afterlife or those other related questions. Now, have you ever heard such matters being assessed, discussed, entertained in worksite wellness programs? 3 questions might come to your mind at this point. How to get started to do any or all of these things, and how long might it take to transition to real wellness, and what are the obstacles to doing so? The answer to each of these questions is the same. You can quote me if you wish. The answer is, I don't know. How could anyone profess to know such a thing at this stage? We haven't tried it yet. Of course, we can study the issues and speculate. I've written essays about how this might be done. You can contact me if you want them, or you can attend the Real Wellness sessions at the National Wellness Conference and look into any one of the issues. There are libraries worth of materials on all of these topics. And I don't profess to have answers that apply to others, but I do think it's important that we each explore them on our own. We would all benefit if your energies as a wellness promoter were channeled to thinking about and exploring ways to integrate such ideas into programs that affect other people's fates. If it were easy, well, we'd all be doing it by now. So the fact that it's difficult should not be an obstacle. I'll finish this with a summary of an article in Wednesday's Wall Street Journal that I commend to you. It's about the Worksite Wellness Program at American Gas. It appeared Wednesday in the Wall Street Journal. I think it strongly supports the case for real wellness, even though that term was never mentioned. While I'm telling this tale, you can feast on a few images. Again, please remember, these are just for fun. Don't look for meaning in these pics. American Gas spent $500,000 on worksite wellness screenings last year. Nothing remotely real wellness about any of this spending. It was pure medical testing. What did they gain from this investment? According to Anna Matthews, the Wall Street reporter, who wrote the article entitled "When All Else Fails, Forcing Workers into Healthy Habits," not much. Health costs were at least 3% higher than they would have been without the program. That's a quote from the AmeriGas executive in charge. He attributes the increased spending to the cost of additional exams and follow-up care from the screenings. Many preventive health programs not only ignore real wellness education of any kind, let alone communicate principles related to reason, exuberance, or liberty issues, they fail to deliver savings on medical costs. Ergo, it's a mistake to spend money on worksite wellness programs that offer workers only risk reduction, only testing assessments, only omnibus health education programming. Doing so might represent a form of worksite wellness malpractice. Read this Wall Street Journal article. It shows conclusively that only those corporate wellness programs that resulted in participants making changes, such as losing weight or quitting smoking, have saved money. And there's the rub. Scaring people with evidence that poor habits have bad consequences does not lead to long-term sustained, exceptional lifestyle habits. The risk reduction approach only works if employees make changes and negative messages, for example, you must deal with this risk or die, give short-term results, if any at all. And these low-level efforts are expensive. Quality of life must be valued for intrinsic positive reasons to be sustained. And that goal is, as you might recall, the bottom line reward of a real wellness mindset. Only real wellness education will give employees a realistic shot at developing their own commitments to quality of life, for positive reasons that are intrinsically valued. With that, I'll close my remarks and maybe we'll have some questions or statements. Thanks again for attending. I hope the introduction invites further interest in worksite wellness for quality of life. In addition to sound prevention, I hope to see many of you at the conference. So look after yourself and be well. And I'll give you one more slide that has contact information where Monday this presentation will be available in essay form and where I can be reached. If you don't have questions, I'll tell you about different categories of wellness. But I'm not sure we're going to have time for that. Let's see if we do have questions. Michaela, are you there? And I think we have like 6 minutes left.
Yep, I am here. And I was thinking I could pass this question over to you from Toshi. He said,
Hey, Toshi, Joshi in Japan.
Yes. He said...
My translator in Japan.
Do you think that... Wait a minute. Do you think that this approach is necessarily to expand real wellness worldwide?
I see no reason why something that's good for the United States that has to do with motivating people to embrace not just responsibility but levels of functioning that entail reason, exuberance, and maximizing their individual freedoms would not be good for people the world over, of course. Yes, and Toshi is one of the people through the Japan Wellness Association who's making this happen in his country. And I know we have online today representatives from other countries such as Alberto Ogata from Brazil and my friends in Germany, Lutz Hurdle and Dr. Mark and many others. I
see Wolf as well. Here's a question.
And Wolf and the Australians, Rod and Bob Boyd.
Dennis Elsenrath, I'm sure I
never
spelled
heard
that.
of him. I don't recognize.
Well, he has raised his hand, and I was going to unmute him and allow him to...
Yeah, let's unmute that guy.
Okay, I will do that.
He's been muted for far too long.
Okay. Are you there, Dennis? It looks as though you can speak. Okay, check your audio settings, and we'll come back. In the meantime, oops, I will. I just saw
By the
someone.
way, anybody who sends a question will have it answered within the next hour or so. So
Right.
if we're running out of time, don't let that keep you from sending in a comment or a question.
Okay, here's another question from Janet. Janet's raised her hand. I'm going to unmute her. How about you, Janet? Can you hear?
Yes, I wondered if you would care to comment about the use of incentives in wellness plans.
Well, yes, who can question incentives? I favor positive incentives, and I think that such incentives ought to be built, that is, incentives for people to get rewards for doing their share to keep themselves out of the medical system once they get quality care by providing additional benefits if we get a national health insurance plan, or even with private plans. I think those people who exercise regularly, who get the checkups they need, do the basic things, who maybe take a webinar, little things, get little rewards, and they can build up. And yes, I'm enthusiastic about positive incentives. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Janet. Anybody else want to raise your hand, have a question? Certainly you can type them to Don, and he will get the printout. Oh, here's something. Here's a question from Gary Suter. Since motivation is the key, how do you find out what will motivate people to make the change necessary?
Well, I think the key is to create the conditions where people will motivate themselves. We have wonderful resources at the National Wellness Conference and many sessions that focus by experts on the motivation question, people who have done evidence-based studies and have valuable data concerning what has worked in the world in getting people motivated in different ways. Not everybody wants to be motivated, by the way, or is motivatable, if there's such a word. Grant Donovan and I have written extensively about the obstacles, the difficulties, how hard it is to sustain a wellness lifestyle. Not that it takes some kind of genius, or you have to be virtuous or rich or especially gifted, but the nature of society is such that all kinds of unsupportable cultures have to be overcome, and customs and habits. It's not easy, and we've written about a concept called I Can't Do It, and in doing so wrote a lot about motivation. But essentially, whatever can be done to create the conditions where people motivate themselves is key, and we can't learn too much about new insights on motivating people. There's no single way that works for everybody.
Excellent. Okay, we had a couple more questions. Dennis asked, Don, do you believe that real wellness works well in diverse groups and lower levels of socioeconomic status?
I'd like to start there because I think these people who have challenges to overcome, who face difficulties and discrimination and are suffering economically and basically have their backs against the wall, will absolutely respond to real life concerns that they have to confront. It's harder for them to distract themselves from real wellness or the absence of it, and I think that it would be a way more effective than any other to get them interested in the basic level, lower level Maslow hierarchy type issues dealing with security and testing and medical issues. So absolutely, I'd expect more from that area or class or cohort than from the rich and famous.
Okay, we've got time. Let's do one more question from Craig Becker. Craig said, what will be the outcome measure to document real wellness is working?
Wow. That Craig, he must be a PhD university professor or something.
What a troublemaker.
Craig, I know Craig is working on those issues, and we're going to look to him to help us understand outcome measures that we can actually track. And so when we go to bottom line oriented executives, we can say this kind of thing works. Sure, it gets people into highly engaged, emotional discussions at the workplace when you're talking about meaning and purpose and somebody wants to convince you to join his cult. But that's a risk we need to take, and with skillful managers, those kinds of discussions can be managed. It won't be easy. We need new talents to be brought into the wellness field, but we've got people like Craig Becker and others who can help us to understand what works and what doesn't, and what kind of outcomes are realistic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Don. As I said, if you have more questions, please type them in. Don is going to get a spreadsheet of all the questions everyone's asked, and he'll certainly be able to follow up on those. This is our last, and thank you so much, Don. It was really excellent.
My pleasure.
Fabulous. I definitely want to have you back. But this is our last Lunch and Learn presentation until the fall. And in the fall, we start back on September 11th. It's every Friday, different speaker, different topic. And, I hope you will all come back soon. Thanks again, Don.
Be well.
Bye.